If you have been asking if healing is real,
stick around and find out that healing is for real, and we don't mean maybe. My name is Tony.
And I am Zane, and we are two witnesses and representatives
of the miraculous gospel of healing.
Boom!
Bam! And I'm Tony Myers.
And I am Zane Pierre. And this episode of the Miraculous Gospel of Healing, we're going to be speaking about how Holy Brother Tony and myself practically approach divine health. Notice that we're saying divine health and not healing, because living in divine health is literally living in the paradigm of life. Right? We are not in any form or fashion, or we have no intention of perpetuating the paradigm of death. So we are actually going to be speaking from where, as a matter of fact, I think I can say, Holy Brother, that we want to leave it in the hands and the responsibility of the listeners to make that decision for themselves. And if you want to walk in healing and healing others, then make that decision, check your gospel, the understanding of your gospel message, and join us on this side of the lake, right? Where we do not live in the perpetuation of the death paradigm, sin, sicknesses and diseases, but we have committed by actually accepting the gospel message. Firstly, that as a foundation, I think that both he and I can agree on the fact that we live from the perspective that Yeshua is the reference point. He is the beginning of the species. He is resurrected, and therefore he is he is also not only our Lord but our forefather, the beginning of the species, and therefore life expectancy is where we start. What do you say, Holy Brother?
Amen. Yes. He is our forefather, which means he gave birth to us. He is not that unreachable goal.
He is not that unreachable goal.
He is a part of us.
Mm-hmm.
He gave birth to us.
Yeah.
Since he gave birth to us, we already have it within ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that is how I live my life.
He is the generation. That's the generation.
Exactly. And as he is, so are we in this world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which means we already have divine health is already within us. That is our true nature. So it being our true nature, that's my thought, is I am living in divine health. I do not walk around in fear of, whoop, if I don't use antiseptic to touch a shopping cart, I may, I don't think that way at all. I am not in a fight or flight mindset. I am not where I have to protect myself on any level. In fact, I will absentmindedly carry on a conversation on a busy street without realizing it, and it will be other people that panic and pull me out of the street because they're scared that I'll get hit.
Right.
True. I mean, that's true. And CJ's attested to it before. Me and Pastor Bill and CJ have been around talking, and I'm there in the middle of the street and I pay attention to nothing. Why? I'm not worried about it because I have perpetual life because I am a spiritual being. It is my spirit that gives life to my body. Now, the developmental process of this for me started with the verse I just stated, as he is, so are we in this world, with meditation, with pondering, with taking that one verse while in a meditative, while in a relaxed state, using not vain imagination,
But
not
holy
vain
imaginations.
imagination,
Yeah,
but Holy Spirit imagination,
exactly.
life, and seeing that play out along with, and the two happen rather around the same time, I would say, along with Romans 8:11, and I don't even quote the whole big long thing. What it boils down to is this: the Spirit is continually giving life to my body. Since He is, therefore, I have divine health and I am incapable of becoming sick, being damaged, whatever. It's an impossibility.
Right, right.
Now, along with that, and this was, and this is to give an example of how I started out meditating, was I would see, I started out with using the burning bush.
Okay.
And honestly, I didn't know I was meditating,
Right, right,
but
right.
I knew I
Yeah,
was using my imagination, but it was
right.
based upon the burning bush, the fire of God, as I saw it, and it was flames of blue. Hello, blue?
Right,
Anybody?
right, right. Okay. I see it here. I see it here.
Now, when you have, for instance, when you're welding, when you're using a torch, a
Right,
cutting torch,
right,
intense heat is blue.
right, right. Okay.
It's not orange.
Yeah,
It's blue. That's the
right,
most intense heat. All
right.
right. So,
And that's also true in the cosmos. The suns with greatest heat. They it's the white, but there's a blue tinge to the white.
right.
Yeah.
So I saw this holy flame of God inside of me and all over me, almost in the image of a man. And the silhouette of a man
Right,
is the best way I can describe it.
right, right,
Um, I guess if you think of what's that one superhero that's flames, you know?
right, right, right. Yeah, yeah.
um, and that's what I saw. And that's the image that would go in my mind. And these flames was burning up everything that was not of life. And so, and once again, this is godly imagination. And there are different ways I envision that. But that's
Right.
how it started out for me.
Okay.
Then it graduated to out of the belly shall flow rivers of living water.
Okay. Okay.
I saw the Holy Spirit as water within me. I guess think of Aquaman.
Okay. Okay. All right.
And once again, going through my body, cleansing my body, and purging everything out of my mouth, taking
All
all
right. All right.
matter of defilement out of me to enter
Okay.
my body again. Now, most times it's came as a circle of water,
Okay. Okay.
going from my feet up through me, out my mouth, which, hello, that would be our speech,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
back down through. A circle is never ending. A circle is eternal.
Yes.
And so that is how I started out seeing this divine health. And you just did it then, didn't you? Did you just imagine that?
I just imagined it.
And like with the burning bush, and I think we've talked about this before, you cannot imagine. No one can imagine anything hurting that bush when the fire of God was on it.
Yeah.
And so nothing could harm it. Guess what? We're the burning bush now. Nothing can harm us. God's fire burns everything. This pushes the death paradigm away and destroys it.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And, that's how it started for me.
Okay.
And so my mindset is always pretty much exactly that. I'm not a mere mortal. I'm not a human hewn down being.
Hmm. Hmm.
I am a spiritual being. I'm not human. I have a human body that my spirit resides in, but I am spirit. So I am untouchable.
That's what we're talking about.
And I said that with a straight face, and I mean every word of it.
Yeah. That's what
And
we're
then
talking about.
we'll get to the other part in the
Episodes, yeah.
next one, the other part of this, just so people know that we will address it. Okay, what do you happen when how do you deal with if something happens that contradicts that belief? We are
Right.
going to deal with that because I know that question already came up. Well, Tony, what if you get cut? Then what do? Don't that shake your whole paradigm? No, it doesn't, because I don't walk by sight.
I
But
think
we
I
are
think
going to get into that. Go ahead,
we,
Zane.
we are definitely going to get into that 100%. And just to reassure everybody with that. But that is on the plan of episodes, right? But I will dare say that if you actually just listen to what we're saying and start doing it, that and all will heal you. Right? You wouldn't need to focus on what's going on. Your body will begin to respond. All right? Now, Holy Brother Tony actually just gave some insight as to when he started, and so I'm gonna reflect that model with regards to talking about how I approach healing, or in what we're speaking about is divine health. And this is something in particular that Holy Brother and I, Holy Brother Tony and I were actually speaking about, because I've come to realize that a lot of believers, you're so focused on the healing for what you're experiencing that you've become overly obsessed with it, and you're looking for the miraculous because you want to be free. And so you're overly obsessed with the miraculous. And that in and of itself is a condition that you have created for yourself. And so you're so focused on the miraculous and your body is not recovering whilst you're focusing on the miraculous. Because it is not a lifestyle you're living from. You're pretty much living in a death mindset. And you're looking for the miraculous because what you're looking for is a burst of life. Whilst on a daily basis, you are actually encouraging death. Right? Now, when I started personally, right now, where I am now, is like a different universe from where I started. Right? And I started doing things based on my understanding, based on the understanding that I had then. Some of it was led by the Spirit. Like Holy Brother Tony was actually mentioning there, he was meditating, he didn't, he was meditating. I could attest to that myself. Right? Because those are things that the Spirit led me into. Not formal meditation, lotus position with your fingers like that. But I would go into prayer and these images would come up. And I would actually, because I had sufficient understanding when I started the research, especially in 2015, I'd gone through Curry Blake. And I understood Curry Blake was someone who would actually take the meditation and put it in a formal structure. So I started to do the same thing, because if he's the first person that I came across that was doing healing, there's something Bruce Lee said. And I'm referring to Bruce Lee to Bruce Lee here because I spent 13 years of my life studying Chinese martial arts, right? And so I have probably a little more discipline than most people, just a tad bit, right? And secondly, that has also taught me that you cannot want something that you do not have, or want to reproduce something that you do not have, and not have a template, a functional template to access it, right? Because a lot of people who, in your ignorance, and I say this with all due respect, in your ignorance, you have actually come up with your own condition as to how you're supposed to experience the healing, whilst the man who actually experiences, instead of you stopping to pay attention as to what is he doing to get there, instead of seeking that information, you're sitting there judging what they're saying, whilst you still need healing. And the only fool in the room is you. Because Bruce Lee said this in a different way. He said, you have to learn the way to find your own way. Meaning you cannot learn what you want to learn until you learn a template that is already working. And once you learn the template, then you could actually see what you want to do or where you want to go from there, because the template would have given you the basic principles, the basic concepts that you should be applying for you to get there. It may not be the template that you're going to end up with in the next 5 years, but it's a template that's actually going to provide you with something to move forward. And so,
and I'm going to reiterate on that. When I was a welder, when you first start out welding,
right,
you have a specific way, and you are taught specifically how to do it. You cannot jump ahead. You have to learn how to weld first.
Right.
Before you can find a better way. You have to start off with a very basic and keep to it until you become proficient with that technique first. Once you become proficient, then that is where you change up. That is where you can use more heat and go faster. That's where you can make finite adjustments That is where you can learn how to weld aluminum. That's where you learn how, all these different things. But
Right.
first, you have to become proficient at the basic. Unless you start there and you're trying, and I see this all the time, as Zane, based upon faulty information, you think you know it. So you're listening to me, to Zane, to everybody else. And you say, well, no, I ruled that out. That won't work for me. Well, then you're right. It won't.
It won't.
But you have to learn first. Then you can develop.
Yeah.
All right. I'm sorry
And
it took so long.
no. That's very fine. And you with what you just said there, I just want to also add to that by saying there is absolutely nothing in life that you're going to get involved in that does not work with the same understanding. Anything that you're doing could be considered a science. Everything that you're doing. And if you don't actually know how to humble yourself, and actually, if you want to reproduce what that person is reproducing, then find out what the science is. Even in the field of business today, you will be a fool by scriptural definition. A fool is someone here who is putting down truth and exalting their opinions and their perspectives above the actual principle. You would be a fool to say you're going to start a business and build the business how you want to build the business, instead of actually understanding what is the functional structure that is already working. Take that, save yourself 20 years, put that in motion, and then go and make new mistakes to learn new things. I've always said this, even long before the Institute. You can spend 5 minutes listening to a man's experience in 60 years and learn the lessons that he learned in 60 years, instead of going to waste your 60 years to learn the same lesson he learned. It's a mentality that we have that is so self-righteous that you are not even willing to understand that this is a species, this is a collective, and we should be growing as a collective. Your personal growth benefits nobody else but you if you actually begin to think that you want to do it on your own. Everything that we build in the society, now this might sound like a vein off here, but I need to get a point across, right? Everything that we build in the society, the cities, the nations, the resources that keeping your home running right now, it wasn't because somebody decided, I'm going to do this on my own and do it my way. You're working with collective knowledge here. Somebody learned it, they pass that on to somebody else, they take that, they build upon that, and that generation build upon that. And today you have a smartphone that started off with rotation. Right? Because it is knowledge that is being built upon. You're building upon that. There are many people who actually turn around and actually watch it, and they want to spend time judging what the next man is doing, instead of what is he doing that is working, because that is a principle that person has tapped into. And if you take that principle and you apply it sufficiently long enough, you get a feel for what the principle is, then you can start to experiment and learn different ways. The same thing Holy Brother Tony was saying. But you cannot start if you do not have a foundation that is steady. And most importantly, the steadiness of the foundation is because you have drilled a basic principle long enough that has become your paradigm. When you approach an architect and you ask the architect how to build a house, it will sound like a million steps. You know, the difference between you and the architect is that he has spent enough time grounded himself on the foundational principles that it has become a logic. It's become a natural way of thinking. that he could put up a house without even thinking. He could draw a house plan without even thinking. The person who's building the house in the same way. And so instead of trying to find out what's the secret, because you want to do it for yourself, think more along the lines of what is the template that they're using. Take the template, apply it long enough to understand the principle that the template is expressing, and then you can go from there. If you don't, you come and ask Holy Brother Tony a question, and what he said could feel like 10,000 steps. You come at me and you sound the same way. It's not that it is steps. It's because you are trying to do something that is impossible. Principles are not intellectually engaged. Principles are practically explored. Okay. I finished that lecture.
Now, let me throw this in.
Right.
This is the danger with having many teachers.
Don't even get me started on that.
Then what happens? You have, and let me reiterate, many teachers at one time.
Yeah.
Because now you're dealing with more than a few principles. A lot of it, you're dealing with opinion.
One set of opinions.
Et cetera.
You're drowning yourself with opinions.
Then you're trying to mesh it all together. You're trying to mesh what I say and with someone else and with someone else and with someone else. So you're no longer practicing one principle and getting the foundation down and then moving on. Now you're making a mess. You're intertwining a bunch of trash that comes out just that, trash.
Exactly. No, 100%. I endorse what you just said there 100%. And so, and it's going to come out like that because you have not stopped and taken the responsibility to understand what the heck the principle is. I today could take anybody and guide them into all spiritual gifts because I've spent enough time practically exploring, using the principle and seeing and actually fine-tuning where the lines, where the principle is. So I could say, do this and don't do this, avoid this, walk here, right? Because of that, I can take the Bible and pull it apart into pieces because I understand the principle that is involved. For other persons, it might sound like it's an elaborate maze. But for me, it's a walk in the park. I'm just walking, strolling my way because I've spent enough time with the principle. So when I started with the person who I knew was reproducing results. I came across Curry Blake. I listened intently to what the man said. I followed him for about a year, almost 2 years. I followed him, listening to him regularly because what I'm doing is there are two ways to learn a principle. Either it is intellectually communicated to you so that you can take it and apply it like a formula, or there are a lot of people who understand principles that have not been intellectually communicated to them, but they understand it by association because they're using it, they're practicing it. There's something that you learn in martial arts as well. There are certain things that can be articulated to you as an intellectually, but then there are principles of strikes, of kicks, of movements that you have to associate yourself with and do it long enough for the teacher to say, yes, you're doing it correct. And then you understand the principle behind the movement. And then you can take the movement and be pretty with it. Because I never deviate from the principle to get your butt whooped. or to take the principle, deviate from it. And whilst you're looking pretty, you throw yourself down. Right? So when I started, I actually followed what he was saying and spent enough time listening to his messages because he speaks about the principle, but he doesn't articulate A plus B is equal to C. So I spent enough time listening to how he's applying it. What is he thinking? What is he saying? To really understand the principle he's working with. And then I started with that and started to use that principle. Use the principle by experience and continue with the scriptural scrutiny. And take what I took from the scriptures, apply it, and see what didn't work and what did work. Right now, the first 2 years, almost nothing worked from the scriptures because I was actually not fully understanding of what the principle he was using. So I used my Pentecostal understanding, applied it, nothing. Right? When we started to really see results, let me speak about me personally. When I started to see results is when I actually started to understand that we were using the same words but different definitions. Right? And so when I started practically by literally. Now, back then, I didn't really understand it as fully as I can understand now. So what I'm going to do is explain it through my knowledge now to not leave you at a disadvantage. But basically, now I can say your spirit is one, and your mind and imagination is an aspect of your spirit. You cannot do something with your mind and your imagination with it not affecting the entirety of your spirit. So however you desire to see yourself in the spirit, in your imagination, it may look as though it's in your imagination and it's just there, but your spirit is one. So if you actually have that imagination and in your mind you're seeing it in front of you in imagination, it's affecting your body whilst you're seeing it because it's one. Right? In other words, what you imagine is impacting your body. It is impossible for you to imagine something and not actually cause the energy as a whole to actually reflect what you're seeing in your mind.
Let me throw in an actual thing that happened. They actually did test and had a group of people using their imagination lifting weights for 10 minutes a day for a month.
Right.
They never physically lifted the weights.
Right.
They never touched the weights during that time period. They put on muscle mass, only operating through their imagination.
See that? And I can add to that in two cases. Number one, that is what you're talking about there, is actually seen firstly in my own martial arts training. My teacher used to have me, we would come to class to practice, and as an assignment, he actually gave me the assignment of sitting down home and just going through, imagining myself in my mind, going through the movements. The persons who didn't do it would come back and pick up from where they left off in the class. I would do that in a space of 24 hours or sometimes 48 hours and come back as though I was training with that for months by just going through the movements in my mind. It literally fine-tuned my nervous system so that I was actually operating with it without thinking. Not only was it not without thinking, but the accuracy of the movements were also very much fine-tuned. People would come people would come into the class and watch me make the movements and even spar with those movements. And the accuracy, and in their mind, I've been doing that for months. When I learned the movement just yesterday or 48 hours ago, learned the new movement, and all I was doing within the next 48 hours was sitting down and just going through the movement in my mind. And when I'm actually executing on the floor, it looked like it was a movie. Whilst the others, they're still struggling to actually understand the movement. Those things actually showed me that what was going on in my mind was really impacting my nervous system, impacting my muscles. We're talking about We're speaking about, for me to do that in the way that I was able to do it, the movements, without thinking, it actually gave my muscles muscle memory. Right? And there were other some other research that I came across also, where they took people who were playing sports, right? Actually on the field, like American football, running, throwing the ball, all of that, and they actually put sensors on them to see which aspect of the brain and the body that is actually experiencing the electromagnetic energy in the body whilst they're playing the sports. And then about a week later, they took the same people, put them on a sofa, watching the sports, and the body responded electromagnetically in the exact same way.
And then you had the Holocaust victims, you had the survivors would often imagine golfing and all that. So this is why, and I'm pretty sure this is true of Zane as well. I can tell, excuse me, I can tell when somebody is using their imagination and when they're not.
Yeah.
When I said, if you want to be healed, sit there twice a day and do this. Imagine this. Because it can't help but to improve. So if there's no improvement, they haven't been doing it.
I think that most people, their blockage is that they were taught in Westernized Christianity that their mind and their spirit are independent from each other.
Which is not true.
It is not true at all.
All right. We have got to go.
Yes. I know what you did time here.
So we will pick this up on the next episode.
All right. So on that note, stay tuned. Boom.
And bam.